The Silk Road was an infamous online marketplace for buying and selling drugs with Bitcoin on the dark web. The website started in 2011, and by 2013 it took off like a firecracker, growing to over 1 million registered users and hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. It became the Facebook marketplace for drugs, including user reviews, product listings, buyer and seller profiles, a thriving community with a forum, and even customer support for settling disputes and issuing refunds. But Silk Road was more like Amazon, because your drugs were always sent in the mail, discreetly shipped in a package that arrived at your doorstep, delivered by your local postman. Inside of the package could have been anything from marijuana to cocaine and heroin, but it went far beyond just drugs. You could buy guns, fake IDs, stolen goods, and even chemicals like cyanide with instructions on ending your life. It was ran by the mysterious Dread Pirate Roberts, who was completely anonymous to everyone in the world. Beneath him was a chain of command that included advisors, cybersecurity experts and developers at the top, administrators in the middle, and buyer and sellers at the bottom, all hidden from the public, known only by their usernames. But beneath the surface, it was anything but organized. There were scammers, blackmailers, and hackers extorting millions, forcing Dread Pirate Roberts to hire hitmen to make his problems disappear. Meanwhile, there were undercover FBI, DEA, and Homeland Security agents working their way up the ranks to take down the largest online drug empire of its time. It all started in the summer of 2011. Homeland Security intercepted drug-stuffed packages at the Chicago O'Hare Airport mail facility. The packages looked similar, but were all addressed to different locations, suggesting people were buying drugs from a common source. But it was only a couple of packages a day, so it wasn't a big deal at first. But it soon turned into a couple of dozen daily packages, and before they knew it, upwards of 100 packages a day were being intercepted, and that was way too many packages to ignore. So, a rookie from Homeland Security called Jared Duryagian took matters into his own hands by showing up at the house one of the packages were addressed to. Jared knocked on the door, and get this, he wasn't greeted by the guy who ordered the drugs, but by his roommate instead. This guy ratted out his friend by telling Jared where the drugs were from. Silk Road, he said, laying out the details like a batch of dirty laundry. It was a marketplace for drugs which only existed on the dark web, a hidden part of the internet shockingly created by the United States Navy in 2002. His friend used the web browser Tor, which hid all of his personal information, including his IP address, before connecting him to the dark web. And to complicate matters even further, he had to pay in Bitcoin, making all of his transactions anonymous. And just like that, the very first investigation into Silk Road begun. They called it Operation Dime Store, comprised of Homeland Security agents from Chicago. But it was at this point in time that whoever it was that was running Silk Road should have ran for the hills and never looked back. Because meanwhile, in Baltimore, an informant tipped off more Homeland Security agents about an illegal online marketplace for drugs. After checking it out, they knew they were up against something big and needed to do something even bigger in response. They assembled a massive team of agents from various government branches, including the FBI, DEA, Secret Service, IRS, and even the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, calling it Operation Marco Polo, but the buck didn't stop there. Silk Road even garnered the attention of FBI agents from New York. They opened up their own investigation, calling it Operation Onion Peeler, because domain names on the dark web use .onion instead of .com. And just like that, the kingpin behind Silk Road was up against agents from all over the United States, all with the same goal in mind: bring down the drug lord and everyone else along with him. But little did the government know, this kingpin wasn't a drug lord like Pablo Escobar, but a middle-class white kid with 2 university degrees from Austin, Texas. Ross Ulbricht was anything but street smart. He grew up in a middle-class family with 2 loving parents and a sister, became an Eagle Scout, and loved painting Dungeons and Dragons miniatures. He smoked lots of weed during high school, but graduated with a whooping 460 on his SATs, earning him a full scholarship to the University of Texas in 2002. As a student, Ross experimented with psychedelics, but studied hard and graduated with a degree in physics. And if that wasn't nerdy enough, he adopted Ned Flanders' vernacular, using words like golly and fudge instead of swearing. If you were to ask his friends, he was laid back, caring and kind, and was always there to lend a helping hand. Who would have thought this drugged-out, friendly nerd was going to become the most influential online drug lord of all time? But this to-be criminal mastermind wasn't done nerding out just yet. First, he smashed that like button, so be sure to do the same. Next, he went back to school on yet another scholarship to earn his master's at Penn State University in 2006. Once settling in, Ross landed a job as a research scientist. He also joined an African-American drumming group where he met the girl of his dreams, Julia. At one point in time, Ross desired the simple life: a wife, kids, and a job as a physicist. Together with his lover, they'd raise their children, grow old, and die in each other's arms. Maybe Julia had a similar vision, but little did she know, this was a short-lived dream for Ross. It wasn't all unlike the transformation of Walter White. It all started when he got involved in the libertarian group at Penn State University. This slowly warped his mind like radiation, ionizing his mental health in the process. They believed governments should screw off because they had no right to tell you what you can put in your body and had no right to tell you what you can and can't buy and sell. And taxes? Forget it, because that's how the governments extort you. Fair enough, you might say, but Ross took it to a whole new level. His libertarian ideals grew on him so much so that he drowned in it, becoming obsessed. It distracted him so much so that, despite earning his master's degree, he failed his PhD exam. But this gave Ross the excuse he needed to make real change in the world, like so many of his libertarian heroes in history. So, Ross moved back to his hometown in 2009 with money he saved up as a research scientist. He convinced Julia, the 19-year-old love of his life, to move in with him. She'd open her own photography business, Vivian Muse, and he'd pursue a life of success as a make-it-from-nothing, self-made man. But like most people in life, he didn't actually know what he wanted to do. He already flunked his PhD exam. He also tried building a video game that demonstrated some of his libertarian ideas, but no one cared. He tried day trading stocks, but just lost money. Ross managed to get some cash working for his friend's online, not-for-profit bookstore, but that was hardly the definition of success. He felt like a failure. You just have to keep trying, Julia would tell him. Come early 2010, Ross figured it out. He put his libertarian views into practice by making an e-commerce platform free from government control. In Ross's own words, he wanted it to be a place where people could buy anything anonymously with no trail whatsoever that could lead back to them. And just like that, its path was written and his fate sealed. He consulted an online friend that taught him about the dark web, but he had one huge problem. How was he going to send and receive payments without leaving a paper trail? Obviously, he couldn't use his own bank account, and PayPal would report him to the police the minute they found out. Then, one unfateful day, Bitcoin shone bright above his head. Aha! Now that would solve all of his problems. He put his nose to the books, learned basic programming, and started building the website in the summer of 2010. But Ross couldn't do it alone. He reeled in the help of his best friend, Richard Bates, who was a software engineer. But Richard abandoned the project early on, so Ross anonymously posted a job offering on Bitcoin Talk after things kicked off. But Ross was faced with yet another dilemma. He had no product. So, Like any straight John would do, he rented out an apartment and cultivated magic mushrooms. He grew a staggering 10 pounds, all while watching movies like Superbad with his shirt off. With the website made and the product ready to sell, Ross was good to go. Just before making it live, he wrote this in his journal: "I am creating a year of prosperity and power beyond what I have ever experienced before. Silk Road is going to become a phenomenon, and at least one person will tell me about it unknowing that I was its creator." Then, like a kid giving a show-and-tell presentation to a classroom full of eager listeners, he proudly showed it to Julia. She clapped, loving it. Finally, Silk Road went live in January of 2010. Julia photographed naked women for their husbands in Ross's and hers apartment as part of her business. As her camera clicked and flashed in one room, Ross hunched over his laptop in the other, anonymously advertising Silk Road on the Schumery and Bitcoin Talk forums under the alias Altoid. Things were slow at first, but like a kindling bonfire, it soon fanned out, and Ross sold all 10 pounds of his magic mushrooms. Then, a gossip blog wrote an article on Silk Road, causing it to soar in popularity. Hundreds of customers turned into thousands, and thousands of sales became millions of dollars in revenue. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. As the site continued to grow, Ross doubled down on making sure he'd never get caught. But Julia became paranoid, telling him the only way he wouldn't get caught was to quit. "How are we going to start a family with you in prison?" she'd ask. But Ross didn't care. He was only just beginning. Ross even started selling guns. "The government gets guns," he'd say, "so why can't we?" You see, everything was about his libertarian beliefs, which grew like a cancer inside of him. And it almost got him caught, because Julia couldn't take it anymore. She visited her friend Erica, spilling the beans on everything. So what did Erica do? Believe it or not, she signed up for an account, purchased some LSD, and partied her brains out. Maybe not exactly the response Julia was hoping for, but the drugs were bad and Erica ended up in the hospital. She spitefully posted on Ross's Facebook wall, writing, "I'm sure the authorities would like to know about Ross Ulbricht's drug website." Ross immediately deleted the post from his wall, burst out in tears, begging Erica to keep her mouth shut. Thankfully, Erica promised to stay silent and the police never found out about the post. But Julia definitely heard about it because Ross furiously exploded on her like an erupting volcano. Unsurprisingly, he broke up with the backstabbing girl he thought always had his back. But Ross was still spooked out and couldn't shake the feeling. First, he visited his best friend Richard Bates and told him that he sold the website. Then, Ross fled to Australia to live with his sister. And like anyone who's escaping the law would do, he surfed, drank beer, flirted with girls, and continued working on Silk Road. Then, Ross needed to find his inner self. He traveled across Asia on some kind of spiritual-like journey full of internet cafes and beautiful scenery before coming to his senses and returning home. But he came back with more than he left with, because during his little vacation, Ross started talking to a Silk Road vendor called Variety Jones. This 40-some-year-old Canadian became Ross's right-hand man, mentoring him on all things books don't teach you. Ross admired him so much so that if Variety Jones said to inject himself with bleach, he'd probably do it. In Ross's own words from his journal, "He has helped me better interact with the community around Silk Road, delivering proclamations, handling troublesome characters, running a sale, changing my name, devising rules, and on and on. He's been a real mentor." In fact, in 2012, he suggested Ross use the name Dread Pirate Roberts, a character from The Princess Bride. In the movie, the character is a feared pirate who appears to be one person, but is actually a title passed down through many individuals, each assuming the same identity. Things only got stickier from here on out because a real threat was spinning in the distance. Law enforcement weaved a web, and they were edging ever so closer to ensnaring Silk Road and cocooning Dread Pirate Roberts in the process. Only problem was, they still had no idea who Dread Pirate Roberts was. Law enforcement's plan was cliché at best. They'd start off by arresting low-level drug dealers and work their way up the top. Their first arrest was Digital Inc., aka Jacob George. He foolishly contacted USPS when his drug-stuffed package was confiscated. To his dismay and utter shock, the Marco Polo Task Force threw Digital Inc. in a pair of handcuffs and shipped him down the river. But he was only a small-time dealer, so Digital Inc. couldn't etch much of a picture. He was pretty much useless. Carl Force, a DEA agent working on the Marco Polo Task Force, thought it was all a waste of time. Why start from the bottom, he thought, when you can go straight to the top? So, Carl went behind everyone's back by creating a catfish account on Silk Road called Knob. He pretended Knob was a cartel member and big-time drug smuggler from the Dominican Republic. Carl said Knob's real name was Eladio Gunsman and spiced him up by giving him an eye patch. This was Knob's profile picture, which was really Carl dressed up as Knob and photographed by his daughter. Then, just like Carl planned, he skipped the small fries and went straight to the entree by whipping out his email client and sending Dread Pirate Roberts an offer to buy Silk Road. With luck, the Kingpin would respond, and Carl could work his undercover magic. Understandably, his superiors were infuriated and couldn't believe what he just did. Plus, Carl was known to take things a little too far. The last time he went undercover, Carl got blackout drunk with the drug dealers he was supposed to be watching and even cheated on his wife with strippers in the process, all in the name of undercover work. But Carl might have been just what the doctor ordered because he successfully slid into the DM of the infamous Dread Pirate Roberts, befriending him. Ross went to Australia in angst, but returned intrepid. So what better way to commemorate his success than by documenting his accomplishments in a journal on his laptop? Apparently, Ross viewed himself like a freedom fighter, the captain of a ship that liberated his people from the evil grips of government tyranny. But in reality, his brain was rotting, and with every step of success, it just rotted more. Offline, in 2012, Ross visited his ex, Julia, deceitfully told her he quit Silk Road, then moved to San Francisco. He moved in with his good friend Renee Pinnell and his girlfriend Selena under the pretense of building an app. But when his new roommate left in the morning to work, Ross headed out to Mommy Toby's, a cozy cafe shop, to manage his $250 million enterprise. But Dread Pirate Roberts was in over his head, and he barely knew how to swim. He was bombarded with server crashes, security vulnerabilities, and scammers on one end, and lost packages and the police on the other. He already hired a team of delinquents to handle the customer-facing problems, so he hired Smedley, a computer programmer, to help with some of the more technical issues. But Smedley couldn't stop bad actors from assaulting the infrastructure. On one occasion, hackers flooded the servers with traffic, causing significant malfunctions. They demanded Bitcoin in exchange for ceasing their attack. Helpless, Dread Pirate Roberts swallowed his pride and paid out $25,000 a week to make them stop. But that was nothing to him because Silk Road was pulling in over $250,000 daily. Besides, Dread Pirate Roberts had bigger things to worry about, like the police. He put Variety Jones in charge of security. He was the watchdog of Silk Road, sniffing out any law enforcement that might be lurking on the platform. He also instructed Ross to install a kill switch on his computer that, in a single keystroke, would erase all of the files on his machine. In addition, Variety Jones told Ross to keep his computer encrypted at all times. Dread Pirate Roberts took it a step further by demanding all of his staff provide him picture IDs, ensuring he knew the identity of the people he paid out Bitcoin to. You'd think this was a stupid idea because of how easy it would be to dish out fake IDs. His platform sold them after all. But Dread Pirate Roberts' idea worked. Staff members surprisingly gave him their real IDs, including Chronic Pain and even Variety Jones. Finally, Ross devised an ill-thought-out escape plan scribbled inside of a text file he kept on his computer. If shit hit the fan, he'd destroy his laptop and phone, then find a place to live on Craigslist under a fake name using cash. This would give Ross enough time to flee to the Dominica, a tax haven island in the Caribbean, where he'd live out the rest of his days in hiding under a fake identity. But he needs citizenship to make this happen. Luckily, the Dominica handed out citizenship like candy, and it only took a few months to get. So, he boarded a plane, flew down to the island, and got started on the application. Then, Ross swam in the Lagoon River, walked along Purple Turtle Beach, and had barbecues. He headed back home a couple of weeks later, but things escalated. The Marco Polo Task Force wanted more arrests, and by 2013, Carl was in the perfect position to make it happen. Knob pretended he had a bunch of cocaine and asked Dread Pirate Roberts to help him sell it. Dread Pirate Roberts hooked him up with a buyer, and this was the guy the police decided to arrest. Carl borrowed a brick of cocaine from the evidence vault at the police station and shipped it to the address that Dread Pirate Roberts gave him. But when the guy stepped outside of the house and picked up the package, the Marco Polo Task Force swept in and arrested him. Turns out, this was a middle-aged fat guy on disability going by the name Chronic Pain, real name Curtis Green. He agreed to be a middleman between Knob, the seller, and Google-eyed One, the buyer. But when Carl Force and a Secret Service agent called Sean Bridges hopped on his computer to check things out, what they discovered shocked them. Curtis wasn't just some middle-aged fat middleman for a drug deal, but a Silk Road administrator. But that's not everything. Curtis also had access to everyone's Bitcoin wallets. We're talking hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins. Days later, the Secret Service agent Sean Bridges secretly logged into Curtis's Silk Road account and transferred over $300,000 worth of Bitcoin into his own personal wallet. Turns out, there was a corrupt cop on their team, but shockingly, Carl wasn't any better. He sold information to Dread Pirate Roberts, helping him evade the law in exchange for hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin. He did so by pretending to know a corrupt government official called Kevin. I guess Carl got too involved in his undercover work, just like the time before. Dread Pirate Roberts noticed the missing money, naturally believing Chronic Pain stole it. Anger turned to spite, and he wanted revenge. He had three options: hire one of his henchmen to visit him, and 1. Get his money back, 2. Beat the crap out of him, or 3. Kill him. Silk Road became like Gollum's ring that he'd do anything to protect, so he reached in his libertarian pockets and pulled out the last option: kill Curtis Green. He believed he had every right to do so because, as he once argued in a school debate, the use of force is completely justified if you have to defend your own rights or personal property. And as Variety Jones put it, at what point in time do we decide we've had enough of someone's shit and terminate them? Dread Pirate Roberts knew 3 hitmen for hire who could get the job done, but went with the worst one imaginable. He chose Knob, aka Carl Force, the undercover DEA agent. Carl just happened to have been interrogating Curtis Green inside of a hotel room when Dread Pirate Roberts messaged him seeking retribution. Knob, the high-rolling cartel member, went along with it. At first, Dread Pirate Roberts just wanted to teach Curtis Green a lesson. Knob sent him a staged video of Curtis Green being dunked into a bathtub full of water in the hotel, repeatedly saying he didn't steal any Bitcoin. But that wasn't good enough for Dread Pirate Roberts. He commanded Knob to kill him. And $80,000 later, Dread Pirate Roberts thought him dead. This is just one example of how dark things got because Dread Pirate Roberts ordered 4 more hits. In another example, a hacker called Friendly Chemist threatened to leak the real names and addresses of Silk Road users, In response, Dread Pirate Roberts hired Red and White, a hitman from the Hells Angels motorcycle gang, to make his problem disappear. He paid out $100,000 worth of Bitcoin and in return received a picture of the murder scene. But get this, Friendly Chemist and Red and White were likely the same person, and no one actually died because it was all a scam. In fact, it was always an undercover cop or a scammer every single time that Dread Pirate Roberts ordered a hit. No one actually ever died. Like I said in the beginning, Ross was book smart, but not street smart. As the years progressed, Dread Pirate Roberts felt the heat like a Filipino sauna. The cops were hot on his trail, and he caught wind that top Silk Road vendors were soon to be arrested. In addition, a user called Death from Above was sending death threats to his Silk Road account. In reality, it was all Carl Force, who was manipulating him into paranoia. Things intensified as hackers continued their assault on Silk Road, and Dread Pirate Roberts temporarily exposed the real location of the Silk Road servers that he hoped no one noticed. Given all of this, Ross felt no choice but to execute his emergency plan in June 2013. He started calling himself Joshua Terry. Under his new identity, he relocated to a different neighborhood in San Francisco, moving in with new roommates and paying $1,200 a month in cash for rent. But instead of destroying his laptop, Dread Pirate Roberts did an interview with Forbes. He told the interviewer that he bought Silk Road from the original Dread Pirate Roberts and wasn't its creator. This was the same lie that he told Julia and his best friend Richard a couple of years prior. If hit the fan, Ross thought he could prove he sold Silk Road a long time ago and get away with almost everything. He just needed to create some fake evidence to prove it. Next, Ross ordered 9 fake IDs from Silk Road and had them delivered to his new place under the name of his landlord. But Homeland Security intercepted the package in July 2013. They visited the place the package was addressed to, and Joshua Terry opened the door. The agents instantly knew he was the guy on the fake IDs, so they questioned him. They learned that his real name wasn't Joshua, but Ross. But they still had no idea they were really talking to Dread Pirate Roberts. Nonetheless, you'd think they'd arrest him on the spot, but nope. They continued questioning him instead, probing about the origin of the fake IDs. Surprisingly, Ross suggested they were theoretically from Silk Road. His answers must have satisfied the agents because they left without arresting Ross. Shortly after, Ross moved for the last time to a new place in San Francisco, settling in with a new roommate in the Glen Park neighborhood, this time under his real name. Then, Ross reignited his flame with Julia, falling madly in love all over again. On Silk Road, he posted on the forums saying that the government's time was coming to an end. But little did he know, it was his time that was coming to an end. The first major breakthrough came from the FBI guys from Operation Onion Peeler. Chris Tarbell, a renowned FBI agent that brought down Sabu, one of the most infamous hackers of all time, was in charge of the team. He detected a misconfiguration of Silk Road's login page in June 2013. To his shock, this exposed the physical location of the Silk Road server. It was in Iceland. So his team flew over, hit up the company hosting the server, and copied the hard drive. The FBI now had a complete copy of Silk Road, including its entire database, chat logs, and Bitcoin wallets. They even learned of the kill switch on Dread Pirate Roberts' laptop, where in a single keystroke, all of the files on his laptop would be destroyed. But more importantly, they used the server to trace Dread Pirate Roberts' last known location to a small cafe shop in San Francisco called Momi Toby's Cafe. But the FBI still had no idea who Dread Pirate Roberts was. The closest thing they had to an identity was the name of the server, Frosty. But plot twist, Dread Pirate Roberts' real name was hidden in plain sight all along. All it took was a simple Google search which remarkably not a single person from Operation Dime Store, Operation Marco Polo, nor Operation Onion Peeler had done. Until Gary Elford, that is, an IRS agent recently assigned to Operation Onion Peeler. He did what not even the great Chris Tarbell thought to do: Google silkroad.onion. .onion is the .com of the dark web, so he basically just Googled the URL of Silk Road. Then, sorting by date, he viewed the earliest listings like a true historian. And just like that, nearly 2 years of investigation imploded in on itself. First, a forum post on Schumery advertising Silk Road the same week it went live. Then, a forum post on Bitcoin Talk about starting a heroin store on the dark web. Both posts were by a guy called Altoid. Gary flashed his IRS credentials to the forum owners, and they replied with the names and emails associated with the accounts. Turns out, Altoid signed up using Ross Ulbricht at gmail.com, but updated his accounts to use the fake email frosty@frosty.com instead. If that wasn't bad enough, Ross also used his real name on Stack Overflow when asking for help connecting to a dark web service. Realizing his mistake, he immediately changed his name to Frosty. But he should have just deleted the post instead, because Gary found out what he had done. And just like that, Ross was exposed like a celebrity's tape. But who would have thought it was a nerdy white kid behind Silk Road the entire time, and that it'd take an IRS agent to bring him down? Gary Elford met up with Chris Tarbell and the gang, and they filled each other in on everything. Chris Tarbell learned how Ross Ulbricht's Stack Overflow username was the same as the server name, and Gary learned about the Iceland server and Dread Pirate Roberts' last known login location. Equipped with this knowledge, it was simple detective work from here on out. Gary ran Ross's name in the government's database, coming across the report Homeland Security did on him concerning the fake IDs. From this, he learned Ross Ulbricht used to live just around the corner from Momi's Cafe. Bingo. The proof was in the pudding. Ross was their man. But to remove any sliver of doubt in the eyes of the law, they needed to take things a step further. In late 2013, Ross headed out to a beach party with his roommate and longtime friends. They smoked weed, and he played his African drum late into the night. But Ross should have never let his guard down, because the FBI watched his every move for the past 2 weeks. They observed that whenever Ross opened his laptop, Dread Pirate Roberts came online. And whenever Ross closed it, Dread Pirate Roberts went offline. That was the last piece of proof they needed. The only thing left now to do was to arrest Dread Pirate Roberts. Their plan was simple. They dispatch 3 SWAT teams, barge in Ross's apartment, and arrest him. With luck, they catch him red-handed on his laptop before he could hit the kill switch. But this wasn't gonna fly with Chris Tarbell. He knew that the minute the door came crashing down, Ross would have already detonated the kill switch, destroying all evidence on his laptop. So, Chris took matters into his own hands, doing things his own way. He assembled his own team of trusted agents, and they went AWOL. There was the muscle man Brophy, an ex-Marine, computer scientist Thom from Operation Marco Polo, and Jared, the rookie from Operation Dime Store. They followed Ross as he left his apartment, heading towards a nearby cafe shop. But it was jam-packed, so he proceeded towards the Glen Park Public Library instead. Chris Tarbell sent out an email that he was just about to arrest Ross Ulbricht, so the SWAT team immediately hopped in their cruisers and with sirens blazing, raced towards the library, hoping to make it in time. Ross entered the Glen Park Public Library, found an empty table, pulled out his laptop, and got to work. It was imperative they arrested Ross before he could hit the kill switch, so they came up with a plan. Brophy monitored Ross from within the library, updating his team on his BlackBerry. Meanwhile, Chris paced back and forth out front of the library. A petite, undercover FBI agent walked over and casually sat across from Ross. He briefly glanced over at her, then made the mistake of turning his attention back to the laptop. Once signed in to Silk Road as Dread Pirate Roberts, the FBI made their move. Suddenly, an Asian woman yelled out from behind Ross, screaming, "F you!" at a man standing beside her. The man responded with a raised fist, ready to punch her in the face. But this was all part of the plan. Ross turned around in his chair, catching the commotion. With Ross distracted, the petite FBI agent gripped his laptop, sliding it away. Before Ross had time to react, he was slammed against the table, Brophy throwing him in a pair of handcuffs. And just like that, it was all over. They caught Ross red-handed, signed into Silk Road as Dread Pirate Roberts, with the kill switch still disengaged. With Ross in handcuffs and the kill switch diffused, the FBI had access to Ross's laptop. But there was one big problem. Almost all of the computer files were encrypted. So, the FBI got to work by scanning the computer's memory and retrieving the password. And just like that, they decrypted the data, gaining access to absolutely everything. They discovered programming scripts, private chat messages, and a text file documenting his Silk Road journey. They even found pictures of government IDs belonging to Silk Road employees. Shit hit the fan, so Ross's lawyer harvested the evidence he planted. He claimed Ross sold the site a couple of years ago, so Ross wasn't the Dread Pirate Roberts they were looking for. The real Dread Pirate Roberts was too smart, he argued, to leave incriminating evidence on his own laptop. Obviously, he claimed, Ross was framed by the real pirate, who not only tricked Ross into signing into Silk Road one last time, but also scattered source code files, thousands of lines of chat messages, and a fake journal throughout his hard drive. And as for the $20 million worth of Bitcoin in his crypto wallet, well, Ross was the Warren Buffett of day trading cryptocurrency, apparently. But the judge didn't buy it, and the jury didn't either. He was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years with no possibility of parole. This sentencing shocked the nation and was even harsher than that of El Chapo, the most powerful drug lord of our time. But some people think Ross deserved it because he ordered for people to be killed, but those charges were dropped. What do you think of this sentencing? Do you think Ross should ever be let out of prison? Ross gave an interview stating how unfair it was for him to spend the rest of his life behind bars, and his mother, Lynn Ulbricht, founded FreeRoss.org, claiming Ross was framed for 90% of the things they accuse him of. But at the end of the day, her son was caught red-handed, signed into Silk Road as Dread Pirate Roberts, with thousands of lines of chat messages and $20 million worth of Bitcoin stashed away in his wallet. Make of that what you will. As far as the other Silk Road members go, the IDs on Ross's computer led to many arrests. Among them was Variety Jones, who turned out to be a 50-some-year-old Canadian living in Thailand. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Regarding the corrupt agent, Carl Forrest was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison for extortion, money laundering, and obstruction. Sean Bridges, the guy who stole over $300,000 worth of Bitcoin, was sentenced to 2 years behind bars. You can learn more about Silk Road by reading American Kingpin by Nick Bilton and the Chris Tarbell interviews found on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and hit that like button.